Hello everyone, this is History 1J. The topic for today is Jeju Forestry Uprising, which took place in Jeju 75 years ago. Everybody, can you see this flower? And does anyone know the reason why I put this flower on the first slide for today? That's because there is a story we need to know in terms of the flower and the event we will learn about today. This is camellia flower. And the true meaning of the flower is that it starts representing the uprising from 1992 when artist Kang painted White Thread of Camellia. People also think that the flower facing down resembles the victims of Jeju Uprising because it looks so depressed and miserable. Here are the 4 main points that we'll cover today. The Jeju Forestry incident took place in Jeju Island from March 1st, 1947 to September 21, 1954. After Japan's defeat in World War II, many residents of Jeju Island were killed by the Risingman and Harry Truman, who acquiesced in the violence of civilian armed groups. Jeju Island was already under severe exploitation by the Japanese, and the island was on the verge of devastation due to Operation Yo 7. And Jeju Island suffered the tyranny of the U.S. military government and the worst famine ever since 1945. Whether it was safe to say that it was the worst situation in the history of Jeju Island. The name forestry originated from the massive unrest that occurred on April 3, 1948. And that day, the Jeju Provincial Party of the South's Chosen Road Party stated a rebellion by organizing an armed group and conducting a police to hear the establishment of the Korean government. 1947년 3월 1일, 요란한 총성이 울렸다. This means that the extreme sound of gun shooting was heard on March 1st of 1947, and it represents the start of the tragedy of innocent Jeju residents for more than 7 years. What can you think of when you look at these pictures? Yes, it is the Korean War-related photos. Most people think that the biggest tragedy in modern Korean history was the Korean War. It is true, but the Jeju Uprising was as severe and tough as the Korean War. However, the event was not known to the public. And as you can see, this photo represents the typical mounted police. And what is the relationship between the mounted police and the Jeju Uprising? At 2:45 p.m. on March 1st, 1947, after the 3-1 Korean independence ceremony, people lined up on the street heading back home. Then, the mounted police riding horses passes by. All of a sudden, one girl was hit by the police, but the police ignored the incident. Because people were agitated for the police's rude and inhuman attitude after the accident, a number of people followed the police to protest against the action. But the police faced a gun to people's head instead of saying sorry or disregarding the unfortunate death of civilians. Due to this, 6 people died and 8 people were severely injured. And they were all innocent citizens who had no guilt. The police realized that the citizens were seriously taking actions against the event, and they asked support from the military because they wanted to dominate people who were the members of the Workers' Party by categorizing as a Communist Party. The police in line was military assistants believed Workers' Party members were all communists and trying to make Jeju Island as Red Island. The Korean government from the mainland aligned with the U.S. military government and decided to make Jeju Island as an isolated territory with the majority of its residents and communists. Although it was not true, the military power at that time was too strong, and the geographical obstacle that Jeju was an island played a role as a barrier for Jeju residents to raise their voice to the government. The Northwest Youth Association, a right-wing, anti-communist South Korean group, committed with various activities against oppression from Korean government. The group strongly insisted the U.S. military as a betrayer who never helped South Korean and the world. 해안선으로부터 5km, and it means that the 5 kilometers from the coastline of the island. The police ordered that areas above 5 kilometers from the coastline were meant to be blocked, and anyone passing the borderline was shot in order to annihilate the entire island. Until 1948, for about a year, 1,000 people died, and during the entirety of the uprising, more than 30,000 people lost their lives without any reasons. Lastly, we need to see the Yeosu Suncheon 1019 incident. It begins with the soldiers in the 14th Regiment who were commanded by the military to suppress the Jeju Uprising. About 2,000 soldiers rejected the order because they believed that Jeju Uprising was supposed to be protected. A lot of people were injured and killed in the regions around Yeosu and Suncheon. This Yeosu Suncheon incident and the Gwangju Uprising were the typical examples of historical events in South Korean history, where civilians raised their voices strongly against the evil government system, merciless military forces, and the government that declared the martial law. Because of these innocent but resolute civilians who had worked for peace and right society in our history, South Korea now be a country of democracy and at least a fairer society than ever before has been attained. Thank you for listening.